Hey everyone, it's Wednesday morning, January 14th, and welcome back to Capital Markets Quickie. I'm your host, Endrit Sella, here to break down yesterday's market action in just 2 minutes. Quick note before we dive in. Today's episode is brought to you by AMF Capital, Asset Management Frankfurt. Learn more about our funds and strategies at amf-capital.de. All right, let's get started. U.S. stocks moved lower on Tuesday, even though a softer inflation report kept hopes alive for medium-term Federal Reserve easing. Investors also had their first real look at fourth-quarter earnings, and that did not exactly inspire confidence. The Dow Jones Industrial Average led the declines, falling 0.8%, while the Standard & Poor's 500 slipped about 0.2%. The Nasdaq Composite was also slightly lower, down roughly 0.1%. So overall, a cautious and slightly risk-off session. Earnings season unofficially kicked off with results from America's largest bank. The numbers disappointed after a $2.2 billion hit tied to a consumer credit card deal, pushing the stock down more than 4%. With that, attention now turns to more major banks reporting later this week, which could set the tone for the broader earnings season. On the macro side, yesterday's inflation report was closely watched. Headline inflation came in at 2.7% year-over-year, with a monthly increase of 0.3%, both right in line with expectations. The more important core inflation number was even softer, rising just 0.2% on the month and 2.6% annually, the lowest yearly pace since early 2021. This data mattered even more after last month's jobs report hinted at a cooling labor market. Traders are now confident the Fed will hold rates steady this month, but expectations have shifted slightly toward rate cuts later this year. Markets are still pricing in the first quarter-point cut around June. Meanwhile, political pressure on the Federal Reserve intensified. Several global policymakers and former officials criticized a Justice Department investigation involving the Fed chair, warning it could threaten central bank independence. The chair himself described the probe as political pressure as calls for aggressive rate cuts continue from the White House. Adding to the political backdrop, the president visited a manufacturing plant in Michigan yesterday, highlighting domestic production and economic policy, with the state seen as a key election battleground. And finally, geopolitics added another layer of uncertainty. The president said countries continuing business with Iran would face a 25% U.S. tariff. That warning adds fresh tension to global trade at a time when markets are already watching developments involving China, Venezuela, and Greenland. All right, that wraps up today's Capital Markets Quickie. Join me again tomorrow morning for more market updates. See you then.